What have you witnessed someone do that made you realize he or she is really smart? One time my drunk uncle was in jail and needed bail money, and being that my dad was the only one in the family with any real savings, they all looked to him to fork up 100% the cash. Having been asked, he realized this situation had two possible outcomes. 1. Pay for his bail and never get the money back. 2. Not pay for the bail and the whole family blame him for it. So, my dad decided to throw them a curveball. He told them that whatever the rest of the family raised for the bail, he'll not only match it, he'll offer double whatever they raised together. Nobody offered 1 cent. Blame averted. I knew two guys in undergraduate who would play mental chess. As they'd passed in the hall, one guy would say knight to queen 3 or whatever. The other guy would roll back his eyes for a second and then nod to acknowledge the move. Both guys then kept walking in opposite directions. Later that day, when they passed again, the second guy would declare his counter move. A game could last days and they never forgot where any of the pieces were. Each had a mental image of the board. Sure, they might have been faking, but these guys were always first and second on the dean's honor list. For all 4 years of my undergraduate, I knew them pretty well. I think the mental chess was legit. Gotta plug my dad in here. Had some friends over, and just to mess around, we asked him the definition of random words in the dictionary. We opened it to the eyes and asked the definition of 10 to 12 letter, 3 to 4 syllable words. Not only did he nail all of them, but most definitions were verbatim. When we got to the 10th word, he goes, the verb or the noun, and we lost our shit. It was seriously ridiculous. We were freshmen in high school and could hardly pronounce the words we picked. Turns out he read the whole dictionary over the summer when he was 16 and bored. Guy is still the smartest person I've ever met. I had a teacher in high school that, using both hands, could write a sentence starting from the beginning and end simultaneously. He even split the middle word of the sentence. He also spoke around 5 languages. I was at my desk waiting to make a purchase over the phone, and I mentioned to a coworker that I always have to pull my credit card out. I should have this number memorized by now. Another coworker overheard that and said, I know your Visa number, and spit it right out. After I got off the phone I asked him WTF, and he said he heard me say it a couple weeks earlier. Numbers just stick with him that way. I already knew he was a bright guy, but that took it up a notch. When you sit down in a meeting for work, where you're trying to solve a big problem and someone can say, that's the wrong question, you need to be asking. People who can do that generally understand the bigger picture and all of the various variables and factors in play, and how everything fits together. It's some next level action to watch the entire room go, wow, we are looking at trees, and that guy's looking at the forest. Aziz, a 10-year-old orphan boy in a village in Burkina Faso, built his own ukulele. I would play my ukulele at night for children, and one day he came so excited to show me the ukulele he built so that he could play with me. He built it with an aluminum can, a wooden board, and got 2 pieces of metal wire to have enough tension that it played a note when plucked. Granted you could only play the one note, but I was so impressed with him. Made it that much sadder knowing he would never go to school and that I had to leave him behind. My wife's grandfather. He's a retired electrical engineer with a dozen patents to his name and a long list of recognitions I can't be bothered to remember or name. I always knew he was brilliant, but never realized just how until one day last year we were visiting and he got a phone call. Keep in mind he's been retired for 20 years and is 86 years old. The phone call was from an electrical engineering firm from halfway across the globe asking if they could fly him out to a site and have him consult on the energy capture of a hydroelectric dam they were building. They'd run into a problem that none of them, all electrical engineers, could solve. They had consulted 3 of the top related university departments in the US on the issue, and the last one had referred them to him. 20 minutes on the phone, and he agreed to think about it. 2 days later, he had solved their issue and written the solution on a single 8x11 sheet of paper, which he scanned and emailed to the company. He said he took so long to write it up because he didn't want to have to fly all the way there at his age. His explanation was so clear I was able to understand and follow it with no relevant higher education. Anybody who can explain highly complex things very simply. It takes an intelligent person to understand it, but it takes a brilliant person to grasp it so fully they can dumb it down to explain it to anybody. My younger brother did really badly at school. He had tutors, aftercare. My mother went absolutely mad with frustration. When he did his finals, he did miserably and didn't get university endorsement. That is the education board's little stamp of approval that says you're smart enough for university. He went straight to work at the place he'd done work experience at, and within a year he was promoted, highly praised for his work, exceeding expectations. Last year he was offered and accepted a job to work for Amazon. He's already been promoted. His girlfriend, who A, was his first girlfriend and B, he only met at 21, and him are moving in together tomorrow. She's going to study in the city they moved to, and I couldn't be prouder of how this stupid little cockroach brother of mine turned out so amazingly. My dad had a business trip in Seattle that I tagged along on, so I could see a soccer match and explore the city. He invited me to go to the research hospital with him one day and I agreed. They were working on testing some type of cardiovascular tool on a cadaver that they would stimulate blood flow into test. Seeing my dad, who didn't go to college, barely graduated from high school, lived on welfare with a single mom, and who knocked up a teenage girl when he was a teenager himself, perform surgery on a cadaver using a tool he invented that could potentially save thousands of lives blew my mind. He had hundreds of patents on devices. I got surgery 3 years ago, and my shoulder surgeon used a tool he invented in the 90s. He's an incredibly smart and hard-working man who got just the right amount of luck to get him where he is today. My older brother has really bad ADD and always did terrible in school. I never realized how smart he was until a few years ago. We were watching Jeopardy together, and he knew most of the answers to the most obscure shit. I was blown away. I swear it was like the scene from Groundhog Day. Someone who doesn't engage with overdramatic argumentative people. How's the saying go? An idiot will bring you down to their level and win. Smart people just avoid it and know how and when to keep their mouth closed. Not a person, but my parents' old dog. My mom would get bones from the butcher shop for their dog. They were long enough that the dog couldn't get all the marrow out of the center. The dog figured out that only my stepdad's truck was heavy enough to break them. After experimenting with the other vehicles at the house, there was usually a bone in the same spot on the driveway every time I went home. A kid in 2nd grade already knew algebra. Everyone knew he was smart. For April Fool's Day that year, our teacher decided to be cute and give us a pop quiz. So she went to the 8th grade class and asked for an algebra test, made copies and handed them out to us. Some of the kids were freaking out, and the teacher assured us that we already went over this. So, she left the room and some of the kids started crying. She came back in after a few minutes and said that it was just a joke, but she graded the tests anyways. The smart kid scored an 18 out of 20. I never saw it myself because I was about 2 years old, but when my older sister was around 4 years old, she used to go grocery shopping with my mom. She, my sister, would keep a running tally for all the items in my mom's cart. As my mom took something off the shelf, my sister would ask the price and then would add it to the total in her head. If my mom put something back, she would subtract it. My sister was right every time when they got to checkout. She's a doctor now. When my friend, who is a prodigy at school and everything he does, chose to go to a music college to learn piano jazz when he could have been a neurosurgeon or an astronaut. While I knew he was smart before, that made me realize that apart from being good at memorizing stuff, he could also realize that good grades don't mean you can be a doctor or a scientist, they mean you can do whatever you want, prestigious or not, and that he could see what would make him the happiest. In my book, he went from a smart student to one of the great minds I've ever talked to. One of my best friends from high school was like a real life Good Will Hunting story. We came from a small blue collar town. His parents were relatively poor. He was pretty much unheard of and unpopular, but not nerdy or geeky. More so, he hung out with the druggies and rock band types. Until he got to high school. He started becoming fascinated with math and physics. He would spend hours at the library just reading books upon books on the topics. Apparently he scored perfect or close to it on his AP exams in calculus and physics as a sophomore in high school. Our physics teacher at the school immediately took him under his wing, and before his sophomore year was over, he was teaching college math classes. He went on to get his doctorate from an Ivy League school and of course is a professor now. But he is definitely the smartest person I know. We used to sit at coffee shops in high school and he would just start doodling long, complex math problems on his napkin. It was way beyond anything I could understand, and I had taken all the same AP type classes he did. Wife is smart, like 6 languages fluently smart without breaking a sweat. Has never not done well in school, always gets promoted etc. But no one in my family saw this because she's an introvert and tries to keep herself dumb, so people get her and like her. My family and I are smart. She's next level up. So, after we got engaged, family had get together. As in cousins, friends, lots of people. As usual, we played some group games. She was reluctant, but I pulled her aside and asked her to try and fit in. She obliged, but was annoyed with me. Started with Pictionary, she schooled the room. Moved to a bunch of card games with a single deck, counted cards, knew everyone's decks etc. Quiz board game, knew all the answers. Over and over again, she was dominant to the point of silencing my family. It was unnerving even for me. A few weeks later, when we visited her family, we don't play games with soon-to-be Mrs. Frogtoosh. She plays to decimate the competition. Oh. Found out my little brother, aged 12, has a legit photographic memory. He's a big Lord of the Rings fan, and knows an abnormal amount about the series. Whenever he answers questions about it, he looks up and squints a bit. I asked him about it, and it turns out that he is actually reading from the book in his head. He can even jump to random page numbers. He also knows a ridiculous amount of world history. I go to him when I need help with that. Sadly, he's adopted and we don't share the same genes. My husband and I aren't sophisticated. At night we wind down by watching Family Guy etc. Although is worthy to note he watches shows about how anything is made or done etc. He drinks beer at night after work and loves his old fav, this flannel with holes in it. Anyway, we are at my in-laws' place. Everyone possibly connected are there. A quiz show comes on, and it seems like a good idea to do trivia in partners. I say yes knowing that we are up against professors, doctors, and hospital directors. We were going down. Not only did my husband answer all the questions first and correct, he beat everyone. It all came to an end when he chugged his beer and burped really loud. My husband is successful in his field, especially with numbers and measurement types of things, but I never realized how much information he retains. I just kinda thought he was smart about the industry he worked in. Thanks for watching the video. For more content like this, please subscribe, like, and share the video and push the notification button.